here. Tonight we're going to welcome the really distinctive voice of Dara Wier to the festival setting here. And this is the kind of poetry that made me want to be a poet. I think it's a really vital force, a real vital current in contemporary poetry. And part of the reason I think that is because when I was in college, I was a studio art major, and I set out to be a painter. And I read a quote by my hero, Robert Rauschenberg, once, where he said, "If a painting doesn't change your mind about something, either it's a poor painting or you're a stubborn fool." And I think that overstates the case a little. But that quote has always stayed with me when I consider work that's new to me by any kind of creative person. I feel that Dara Wier's poems, they really satisfy my desire for every poem to be new, for every poem to be a poem that I haven't yet read. And that's important for me. In her book, Reverse Rapture, for example, almost every line is made up of parenthetical expressions. And it's an enormously challenging project to undertake. She more than rises to the occasion, and I'm very aware when I'm reading it that I have never read these poems before. And in other poems, I found and this is just my way of looking at it, she'll break a line in such a way that she breaks up the syntax of normal reason and normal logic. And by doing that, she privileges an intuitive logic. And I think that this is a really dazzling accomplishment, and one that really a lot of great poets are really challenged to meet that. I find that her poems are often lyrical releases of the hidden promises of language, and I'm grateful for that. For me, they value pleasure over comfort, honesty over reason, and insight over information. And in that way, I feel that they fulfill for me Rauschenberg's mandate that a good work should be something original. And it reminds me of a work of another artist. Salvador Dali was complaining once about a lack of originality in the way people live. And he said, "Why is it that when I order a lobster that the waiter brings me a lobster? Why doesn't he once in a while bring me a flaming telephone book?" And I think that's a point well made too. It's another way of saying the same thing. Why can't we have something original and insightful that helps us to see things in a new way, helps us hear things in a new way? And tonight you're going to be served some really wonderful and surprising poems, and they're going to be much better than the lobster. I'm delighted to present to you Dara Wier.
Wow, the light is big. This is huge. I wanted to look at the people on the balcony because I've been wondering who was up there all week. So this light right across here is going to make it really hard for me to look at you guys. Do you mind? Okay. But it's nice here. It's been a really, really great week. The first poem I read, I'm going to dedicate to all of you for being such lovers of poetry and being around to see what poetry does. And this first poem goes like this. If I were a raptor cruising through the timetables of history, I would want you to come with me into those years in which it is recorded that nothing happened in daily life. So maybe we could stir something up. We could listen for the syllables in a famous Arab's epic and watch tea appear in China. Maybe we could warn the alchemists to take better care of their products. Like drop-ins to a seance, we might enter those eras in which it is recorded nothing happened in music and say, this is impossible. And since it appears not a year's gone by without something happening in politics, maybe you could run for office and refuse election. Maybe we could throw out enough monkey wrenches to affect some different outcomes. Longer ago than 3,000 years, no one had imagined labor strikes in Thebes. There was no Hebrew alphabet, no trumpet-playing competitions anywhere at all. Nobody had seen a catapult, and we'd have to pack our own lunch because there were no chickens in Babylon. That didn't work. Let's see. Okay, this is called Tyrannies of Affection. One television brings a family together. 2 drive it apart. 3 televisions bring on a war. 4 televisions and a radio and 2 computer monitors result in poor nutrition. 5 televisions, a CD player and a satellite dish, 2 cell phones and a camcorder, 2 VCRs, a microwave, 4 tenting areas, 10 food courts, a telemarketing service, 8 focus groups, 24-hour service, alpha paging, and free estimates guarantee mold. 6 televisions may be what we need. Thank God for holidays. 7 televisions make a level playing field. 8 rid us of mediators, lawyers, doctors, and compromise. 9 is a magic number. 10 are for Tennessee, 11 are sticky, 12 shy, 14 stuck on the forbidden floor. 15 and so on ad infinitum. 16 televisions are way too many. 17 is getting somewhere. 18, now we're talking. 19 wants to slow down, be in bed all morning, all afternoon, all evening, and eventually get up when it wants to. Click off the TV. It's still dark in the heart of our heroine. She's just yawning and thinking about ceilings. What can we offer her now? What can we do? Oh, well. How many televisions do you have? I knew some people one time who claimed they hated television. So they had a television. I guess to hate it. And they had a piece of cardboard over it, taped on its front part of it. That seems so unnecessarily difficult to me. So this is called For a Few Seconds There, I Was a Panther. I looked like a woman looks, and words cruised paths through forest and meadows and riverbeds and wind-whipped vaults in my human cranium. But they weren't the kind of words that ever lived to see the light of day. And my hair remained hair, and my hands and feet did not change in appearance. I did not grow fangs. My nose stayed long and thin, and my ears didn't move to the crown of my skull. Though now, when I watch a panther lope over a ledge below which a fawn sleeps by its mother, I concentrate on how much shows through its finest fur. Back then, during the few seconds I was a panther, I licked the panther's paw, I cleaned the panther's nails, I combed the panther's hair. And this is called Thief of Sparks. God was coming from an unnamed galaxy with a can opener and an attitude and stargazer lilies and tassels. Inflorescence comes to town on Mondays, if I remember correctly. In early June, a doe tastes grapes in half-baked fields at around 5 in the morning. And long after our glaciers have excused themselves, a prehistoric lizard's alarm goes off, and it shrugs its shoulders and lifts its head into warm January fog. If I remember correctly, you found me hiding beneath a bed, reading a book about tickling and kissing. You offered me a secco pear. I wanted to return the sugar, eggs, vanilla, and the broken fence. If I remember correctly, you were two generals exchanging prisoners in meadow soups of sulfur. If I remember correctly, your face was lit with the strike of a match. My eyes rolled back into their containers, their pain clinics. They could no longer look at a snow leopard patrolling an onyx maze in moonlight. And this is, your posture is positively alarming. I love your every gesture and those places from which your gestures have recently exited. The waves you leave in the air all around us wash over me. They wake in my eyewash, and I love what that does to those poppies. I stand in awe beside how your foot puts down, almost as if your foot and gravity think in unison that they are most amusing. I love the places your hair pokes into. I watch mesmerized where your fingers ratchet and winch. You are greater to me than a doghouse and monkey boards. You sustain me more than the devil's oxygen racks. The hull columns you are stronger than are strong enough to elevate heliports. I worship your hoisting equipment, your lifeboat. You are more than generous when you lend me your drill string motion compensator, for you know that I am in need of that sort of thing. I thank you for the anchor chain. It rests next to my relic of St. Rita's thorn. I thank you for the lug nuts and heat exchanger, the flywheel and the clutch. I have nothing to give you just now but these thoughts about hay and how it is known that the top of a silo can be called a pumpkin, melon, parachute, or umbrella. No, I'm not going to read that. Okay. This poem is called A Modern Version of the Way the Rosary was once said throughout Western Europe in the late Middle Ages. Got that? Okay. I'm not sewing velvet patches on a woolen blanket, not putting silver buttons back where they belong, not sweeping or folding, not in my right mind, not knowing what I owe or to whom I should bow down or thank or praise. No, neither am I putting aside nor storing up good deeds I'll need when I need bailing out. Not putting my house in order, no, not preparing to meet my maker, no, nor do I wish to settle old scores, no, not keeping wolves at bay, and I'm not disturbing ant beds. Not in touch with fine madness, no, I'm not crawling around under a porch in search of a nest of puff adders. I hope not to find. No, I'm not skipping rocks nor counting how long it takes a ship's wake to subside, nor waiting for the big one to wash ashore and overwhelm its itty-bitty ancestors. No, I'm not trying to fathom a stew of rotten flowers and rainwater. I'm not pouring from a vase at the left-hand back corner of a freshly whitewashed tomb. No, I'm not getting ready for company, not biting my tongue, though a little bit of biting can feel good. Not bearing my soul, I'm not hiding under the kitchen table, not wanting to listen anymore, not lost in a camphor-reeking satchel inside a chifforobe, not stretching under a bed on a cool linoleum floor. No, I'm not sitting on top of a mule, surveying the sun and the moon. Nor am I stirring and stirring and stirring a roux. Nor am I watching strands of hot sugar fall into cool water. No, I'm not climbing into a fig tree to be close to mockingbirds and out of the way of hoop snakes. And I'm not falling asleep next to a crate of melons, nor am I staying awake in case I might miss something. No, I'm not staring forever into a fire, nor walking through a rainstorm into a cypress grove. No, and I'm not waiting for lightning to strike. No, and I'm not pulling aside a curtain so I can see a man with a raccoon looking over his shoulder, or a woman holding a cup of steaming coffee, or hear what's passing between them, or see a man at the end of a day taking off his shoes, or a boy dressed in clerical clothes dispensing frankincense, or a hand shifting into reverse, or a hand turning numbers to get into a safe. No, I'm not sitting on top of a mule surveying the sun and the moon. So there's that. This is called eye cages. I was idling in the blue lassitudes, my louvers half opened, my shutters shut not. My head was a sieve and my heart was a sifter. I surveilled surveillance. I babysat the babysitter. I molted more times than money can buy. It was a crime among criminals. It was a walk in the park. I stumbled upon red. I said things to myself I could do without. I diagnosed the diagnoses, and yes, it was hopeless. I crossed in the crosswalks and switched back into a cattle guard. I was a good cattle guard. Children were afraid of me. Next, I was a footbridge. Then I was a roundhouse. And after that, I was a birdcage. For what seemed a lifetime, I was a page someone dog-eared in a book about noonday devils. I donated donations. Finally, I got to be a thread a friend was pulling from a sleeve. A blue thread, an indigo bunting. Later, I was not walking, but I was the texture of walking. On a wet sidewalk at 5 in the morning. Street lights dimmed as I passed under them. I felt a lump in my throat for every one of them. Soon enough, I could see the edges of a city crumbling in a ditch bank. I could see the blue moon towing and rowing back to where it had come from. I homed in on the drops of water that fell from its oars. Okay, now this poem, this is a poem called Cord of Wood, Spark of Shoes. And it's a poem that's made up only of the transitions that would be part of how a story gets told. But there's no story. So only the transitions are there to tell what they can of a story, of any story. For a while, and back of, stepped aside in case not even close, still wanted a better view. And this worked for a while. Until something someone said changed the terms in favor of after all this time, and all of a sudden wanted to start over with as soon as possible. After almost out of sight return was someone thought better of it, almost too late to make much difference. And for a while nothing went on, but some sighs and a couple of gasps now and then found in an out-of-the-way place. Second thoughts were having profound effects in the first place, or at least after too close to call, backed off without how could it be to begin with, and found something someone touched under somehow something must have mattered, slowly returning, almost as if nothing had happened, and as if nothing else, at least for the time being, could possibly be more important than that. And is. So everything would have to be, might come around more and more often, and forever might reverse itself. This happened. It wasn't what anyone thought it was really. It was really, really what was really wanted. It is to be, not that that mattered so much, and would be for a while. Isn't that a sad story? Okay. And this poem is called Romantic. My love said, "Take all my books. You can take all my clothes. My hats, my shoes, my gloves, you can have my watch band. Take my sifters. You can have my glass head and my silver darts. Take my wild boar, my astronaut. You can have my pots and pans and my replica of the United States. And take while you're at it all of the presidential figurines. You can have all my matchbooks, my binoculars, my exceptionally fine collection of cleaning products." You know this is love, you know. Oh, well. My one-of-a-kind snake charming horn. Take my sand dollars and beach glass. Take all of my spices and salt and pepper. You can have my smoked ham and my brown mustard. You can take away my Progresso soup. Take away my bread. Take my spoons. You can have my sheets and my pillows. Take my rugs and my 3 erasers. Take my pitcher and the scarf you gave me. Take my feathers my fox took. From my hawk, take my walking stick. You can have my broom and my glass eye. You can take away my atomic clock. Take my dog. Take my rule book. Take my decoy and my bamboo cage. You can take my girl waiting on her suitcase, my Michael Jackson doll. You can take my mother and her priest in their holy water basin. Take my drill and my hammer. You can have all my brushes and combs. Take my handkerchiefs and my scissors. Take all of the keys you can find in the house. Take my scythe and my hoe. My rags, my lamp with the lovers asleep in one another's arms. Take my sprite sitting on a stump, daydreaming over an empty book. Take my moose. Take my coffee can of loose change. Take all of my ant traps. Take my window panes. Take my steps and my doors. Take my chicken shack and my wheelbarrow. Take my combat ship plaque. Take my Vatican champagne flutes. My earplugs. Take my quilts. Take all of my quilts. I would not take one stitch of one of your quilts. Though I love them, I sweetly interrupted. So this is called Not That Lake. And here it goes. More than 11 tall antennae blinked, lake, and unblinked day and night. And who would want to ignore all that, said the lake. At first, then, there were the robber barons the lake. And there were different kinds of birds by the lake. I could smell smoke of smoking eternally of the lake. I thought all of a sudden, I love the lake. I wanted to go over by the lake. Do you know wheat went out to sea by the lake? Do you know what went on when the lake? You get an inkling and then the lake. You begin to take a drink of water, but the lake. You pay out certain percentages over by the lake. You drift into other worlds, and soon enough, the lake. Your hand is like the lake. Your hair, the hair on your head is the lake. I thought lake all of a sudden nearly in the lake. These trees look weak in the knees for the lake. Someone's father old in his grave from the lake. Real honest-to-God choir boys singing for the lake. What someone thinks someone else remembers by the lake. Anyone will say almost anything to appear to be rational next to the lake. It was an exciting week inside the lake. Do you have any plans yet for the lake? Oh, all we need was just a little bit more of the lake. Friday before last, a little before 5 in the lake. Quick, I'm shot through the heart. Please call the lake. I now pronounce you man and lake. The girl cut her teeth on the lake. The boy was named after his mother's side of the lake. After so many days of wind and rain, the lake came out. And the lake was the way the lake was. And I put my hand on my love's knee under the lake. And my love's head turned and looked into the sea. Thanks. I was in, I think, maybe Duluth? How does that sound? Duluth? And it's all along the lake. And I was there for about a week. And I realized that everything everybody said or did ended in the lake. So there was no, and it was kind of great because it gave me a sentence to write. And a way to end the sentences when I could find a place to do it, you know. So, and this is called Prose Poem. Prose poems are everywhere these days. Have you noticed? And I had all my friends write prose poems. And I felt very left out because I just couldn't write a prose poem. I would try to write a prose poem and it would turn into something else. So I decided that I would force myself to write a poem by calling it prose poem and stick with that. For a long time, I'd wanted to be in a prose poem and could find no way to do so that I despaired I'd ever get to. But here I am now, and I will not leave here until my desire to be in a prose poem is satisfied. And so I will not stray out of this prose poem even while I don't know what to do in here. And though I'm lost when it comes to what could or should be happening in this prose poem, I will take up a digression that involves a crazy essay I recently read about what hideous prisons paragraphs are, and how, until writers find new ways around them, paragraphs will hold writers hostage and never let them think thoughts other than thoughts paragraphs delimit with their omnipotent paragraph authority. So there. I'm feeling just fine now, sticking around in this prose poem, giving me a very satisfying prose poem feeling. And perhaps sometime later, long after I've exited this prose poem, I can look back with nostalgic poignancy, thanking and praising the prose poem for allowing me to spend some time in its precincts. I'm now leaving this prose poem. Okay. This is a poem called Attitude of Rags. It felt like a story, sorry it lost all its sentences, like a sentence looking for its syntax. All of the words had homeless, unemployed, orphan written all over their faces. It had that parboiled, simmering, half-baked look of curiosity about its mouth, like a month of Sundays has in the mind of a non-believer or a true backslider. One got the impressions reluctance was waxing. One wanted to say passion was taking a beating. One wanted to say one's prey to one's feelings. The feathers of their feelings were all scattered. It was the kind of day where one to see a flock of creepy baby angel heads attached at their necks to pitch black aerodynamically preposterous little wings clustering at the sum of things. One would rub one's eyes, be too faint to respond, much less explain. It looked the way a fence looks just after the last stampede. A big old blood-colored barn collapsed in its tracks. Out of hiding came all the hidden cameras. It looked like the streets look after a parade's disbanded. It was the kind of day in which emotions roaming from town to town, free to be themselves, enjoyed their rich fantasy lives. This was the kind of day that day was. We were rags in the hands of a narcoleptic duster. Not anymore. Okay, so I'm going to finish up by reading just a little bit from this book, Reverse Rapture, which is a long book. Am I doing okay time-wise? Sort of okay? Sort of okay. Okay. This is a this whole book is one poem, but it's in pieces. And it begins with a prologue that introduces the situation and the characters in the book. And every line that I read to you right now ends in a emptiness or a space or a colon, so that it's to be filled in later on by the book or by anyone who reads any of the lines. These were some of their laws. These were a few of the miles they cruised. Here is where their beds went down. With this their fate was sealed. These are some things they shared. Here is with what they were comforted. In this manner were they made to be cared for. In these ways were they shaped to be seen. Among these things were they what they could bear. In this time here is what they will be shown. With this they will be remembered. These were some of their customs. Here is what they kept to themselves. Here is the place they questioned. In this way were they provided. This is what they provided. In these instances thus were they praised. It was with this they were wondering. These were with what they marked themselves. With this will they be never forgotten. These were some of their means. Here is an example of one of their methods. With this did they solace themselves. With this did they adorn themselves. In these ways did they keep their provisions. This is what they did and what they were fond of. By this practice did they shore up magnificence. These were with what they were asked to furnish, things they caused to be memorized, their most common rituals. Among these things, these were considered unnecessary, and these were in surplus. These things they misused and prized and forfeited and pitied. And by these things did they resist discovery. These were some of the choices they made. With these did they choose to be represented. With these did they divine. And with this were they occupied. With these things did they labor. For these things did they hope. For these did they say they would die for. These were the bargains they struck. This is what they were given in exchange. This is how they recognized one another. By these means was love aroused. Here are fragments of what they worshipped. Among these things they passed their days. Here is what they were willing to sacrifice. In the traces of these things they were known by. This is what they have left. Here is where they left without a trace. These were some of their gifts. And the first section is all I'm going to read to you, just to give you a taste of it. And I caution you, don't worry about following this. You'll be okay. You'll be really fine. If you get lost for a few minutes, it's okay. You can come back. You can jump in and out. It's like a piece of water. You know, a piece of water. That was a cove. That was an inlet. And then it moves back in at the end of the day. There's sundogs. There's no way to catch one. You don't want to do anything. You try to look like a rubberneck. You try not to put a horse there. Those are pronghorns. Why can't they be antelopes? We were walking inside a dust storm. You were born in a dust storm. You say so as if it means something. It blew in some magpies. It came in under the door frames. We were migrating. You rolled up the blueprints. You rolled up the sidewalks. It's a game trail, like biofeedback. It looks as if it used to be somebody's backyard. It's covered with lawnmowers. That's a solution. Like bentwood, like an arroyo after a flash flood. That's where we went to find arrowheads. It was a reflex, as if someone had hammered its kneecaps. They were always saying they weren't saying what they were saying. It made it hard to follow them. They were telling us they had to make up their own minds. It looked like an enclave. It wasn't a sewing bee. They said we'd just have to believe whatever it was they wanted us to. It looks as if it used to be a ball field. All that's left is a little slice of rubber. It was a slider. That's a place to put the sidelines. That's a line drawn in a basin of water. We needed a better light source. We needed sugar cane. We needed our cane knives. We needed dry blankets. We couldn't get away from the undercurrents. They were everywhere. They were thick as thieves. They never seemed to mind that. You said they are what they are, like a tar patch. It sounded as if someone was cranking in a really old fishing line. But it was amplified, like it was prehistoric. It was their pay dirt. They wanted to put it in vending machines. We would be paying for it with our shirts and with our pith, and that's what happens to cattle. They call it a necklace for short. What if you resist believing that? They say you're an ephebe. They'll say you reek of colostrum, like jawbreakers, like seesaw. You'll be booby-trapped. You'll wish you were sunspots. That's how we got here. It was written all over the asphalt. We needed someone to translate, something that was necessary, not because they had nothing to say, or maybe they were afraid to say it. Maybe they were afraid it would be too costly. I doubt it. It seemed to be antiseptic. Too antiseptic it killed everything. That is an exaggeration. It was a flare-up. It was a flamethrower's decoy. It's written all over a wristband. You came in bobbing around. You called it dancing. You ricocheted because you had to. There was still dew on the grass. You were frisky, if you want to call it that. Everyone was frisking everybody. They said it felt good. They were practicing a new kind of hero worship. It was deep fried. We needed to be decapods. We were supposed to roll with the punches, as though we were boiling, as though we needed to be. So say you're some kind of star. Become angry. Don't let them take your picture. Be sullen. Feel as if no one understands you. It looked as if there was some kind of dealership, so we deviated. We variegated. You were the marshal of that parade. We took over a convent. We didn't stencil. We were rifle birds. You said we were ordinary people. We didn't like flypaper. We had a few yardsticks. We needed to reconnoiter. You were the one who could go in and out of the house without notice. You were noiseless. You were never baptized. There were several other options. We needed to spend a night in a cypress grove, like bloodhounds. You were self-propelled, like a distributary. When a thought flickered over your face, when you ran a hand through your hair, when headlights crossed over your cheekbones, when you shifted away to look into something, you were the one with oars in your hands. Thank you all so much.